Good morning. Welcome to Momentum Mondays. I'm excited, pumped up to open up the call. My name is Lynette Rogers, and I am honored to bring to the line a phenomenal woman, someone who is known as a professional coach, role model, mentor, leader, national speaker, vice president of human resources in corporate America, and many others. But she says her most important titles are wife and mom. She has helped me and hundreds across the country become better and stronger. She's the host of this call, and she is the author of the Maximize Her Daily. Oh, my goodness. Jill Green, are you out there?
Good morning, Lynette. How are you today?
On fire, pumped up, ready to go. Let's do it.
Awesome. Folks, I want to say good morning, and good morning. Welcome to Momentum Mondays. My name is Jill Green, and I'm 416, the host of the call that's designed to wake you up, shake you up, and take you up to new levels in your life, your career, your business, and your dreams. Listen, on this call, we are reaching dreams in 16. But before we get started, I'd like to introduce you to a few of my amazing co-hosts this morning. First up, we have Miss Michelle Washington. She is a visionary of Women of More, creator of the newly launched Women of More magazine, all the way from Newark, Delaware. Good morning, Michelle.
Woo! Jill, good morning. I am intentional with executing my dreams and my destiny every single day. Good morning.
Good morning. Woo! Michelle always gets so pumped up every single morning. Next up on the list, all the way from my hometown, Fort Wayne, Indiana, we have Miss Dawn Roseman. She is a partner in a major law firm, a keynote speaker, and the new author of Amazon's hottest new topic, Boss Presence. Give it up for Dr. Dawn Roseman. Good morning, Dawn.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Momentum Monday. The callers, listen, I was created to reign. You were created to reign. We about to do it together. Let's go.
And you already heard her amazing voice. She's Miss Lynette Rogers. She's owner of Virtually Yours, founder of Saving Our Youth, author of #1 best-selling book, Mission Unstoppable. She appeared with Les Brown and George Fraser, all the way from Detroit, Michigan. Give it up for Lynette Rogers. Good morning, Lynette.
Good morning to all the Momentum Monday champions out there. Guess what? I'm slicing, dicing, and killing procrastination because the future is now. Let's go.
Let's go. And I want to say a special thanks to all of you who join us every single Monday to make sure that your Mondays will never be the same. If you want to dialogue with us, go right now and join our Momentum Monday Facebook group and make your comments or ask your questions. You can like something, you can hashtag something, or ask a question, all right? So you have to request permission because it is a closed group. But, folks, I am so excited to announce this next young lady. She is going to help us with our brand new series called The Many Faces of Mental Health. This is actually an extension of a panel discussion we had at the Makeover Conference in Fort Wayne last week. We had an amazing panel with Alice Jordan Miles and Sharice Dixie, our clinical expert on the line, and we talked about mental health and how it's showing up in our communities, how people are feeling overwhelmed and feeling like suicide is the only option. So we decided that the Makeover Conference, Danita and I, will always tackle issues that affect real people. And here on Momentum Monday, we decided the same thing. We will tackle real issues for real people. So folks coming to the line, all the way from my hometown, Fort Wayne, Indiana, Miss Danita Washington. She is the founder of Girls Rock Organization, the creator of the Girls Rock Summer Camp, the newcomer face and model for Le Petite Studios, all the way in Fort Wayne. Danita Washington. Good morning, Danita.
Good morning, Monday movers and shakers. I'm excited to be on the call. Remember, though, to lead with love this week because someone you encounter might need it. Let's go.
Let's go, Danita. I know that you're going to help us with this amazing topic this morning called the many faces of mental health. Folks, we're going to be in the Facebook group posting their notes and taking questions. But, Danita, please introduce your guest today and take over the call.
All right. Today I am so excited, you guys. We have Sharice Dixie, who is a licensed clinical social worker here in Fort Wayne, Indiana. She's going to join us and kind of give us some insight on how to help heal and recognize some signs of mental health. Sharice, welcome to the call.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
No, thank you for saying yes to the call out. We also have pastor, teacher, and my mentor. I'm excited to have him on the call today, Anthony Payton. He is the leader of Come As You Are Community Church here in Fort Wayne. And we could go on and on about the things that he's done nationwide and abroad, but we're going to keep it short so we can get some information. Welcome to the call, Pastor Anthony Payton.
Well, thank you very much. I'm excited about being on the call and excited about all that you all are doing.
Thank you so much. I'll jump right in. Sharif, I kind of wanted to start with you and give us, the definition of depression and talk with us maybe about some background on mental health.
Well, when we think about depression, the most obvious signs of it, sad or having a low mood, oftentimes people present themselves with a loss of interest in things that they used to or normally find interesting. When we look at mental health, it's like a continuum, if you would think of. On one end, we've got, mild depression or simple depression. And on the other end, we have other illnesses such as schizophrenia, bipolar, et cetera. So, at some point in our lives, all of us, I believe, will fall on this continuum at some point, somewhere, because all of us, I'm sure, have experienced these feelings of just sadness or being low. And there are certain events or times in our lives where this may be more prevalent than others. And that's why it's so important. I'm so grateful that you all are having this discussion today and that someone may be blessed or may have a better understanding of how to help someone who is depressed.
It's funny you would say events because tomorrow is the day that my house fire happened here in Fort Wayne. And, Sharice, I'm not kidding you. It's a year later, and I noticed feelings coming up yesterday and this morning, just thoughts and pulling up the newspaper articles and stuff like that. And, Facebook, of course, does a one-year memory of everything that you post. And so when you say events, talk a little bit about that, how events sometimes can take you into some dark places.
Sure. Well, what you've experienced, Ms. Danita, obviously was horrific in and of itself, but it was trauma. It was very traumatic. And even for these events in our lives, such as deaths or if we lose our jobs and these kinds of things, even moving sometimes, it's not uncommon to have these feelings to resurface during anniversaries or we call milestones. So, for example, when my father died of, natural causes over 19 years ago, I would get sad or blue during June sometimes because everybody's getting married. And I've never been married, and I'm thinking, well, geez, there goes my chance of my dad walking me down the aisle. That's not going to happen for me. So those things would come up periodically, and that's normal. It's so important to understand those things are normal. For other people, it may be a certain song, a certain fragrance, a certain place may cause these triggers as well. But milestones, most definitely, if there's anniversaries, birthdays, you look around and you look at either where you've been, where you should be, who's not there, who was there last time, and so you have these rememberings again. There's one event, however, that we don't think about often, and it's usually looked upon fondly, and that's retirement. Right? We work all of our lives to retire and enjoy ourselves, and so we assume that everyone is. But for those folks who retire, oftentimes, their jobs was all they had. And so now they have to figure out, what do I do now with my life? What do I do now? If my work was my life for so many people, retirement can be one of those events as well that we often miss that can cause people to spiral into a depression.
So what are some of the symptoms that you see, Sharice, that we should look out for, when people have these moments or even sometime before the moment, that silent suffering, some of the things that we can maybe look out for?
Yeah, I think, Ms. Danita, the most obvious thing to look out for is a person who's just not themselves. If you spend any time with an individual, you have an idea of what their personality is like. And if there's been a shift, so to speak, that's lasted, more than 5 to 7 days or so, you might want to begin to ask questions. Are you okay? What's going on? Those types of things. The most obvious, of course, is the sadness or the depressed mood, significant weight change. And I say change because it can be loss or it can be gain. And this is, we say, up to maybe 5% or so in terms of this weight change. Change in sleeping habits. Either the person stays up all night long and can't sleep, or the person is sleeping a little bit too much, is another sign. There's a chronic fatigue, feeling of worthlessness, of course. But the one thing that we also miss is irritability. People who appear to be a bit more stressed or touchy than usual is also a sign of depression.
Okay, awesome. Pastor Peyton, I wanted to bring you in on the call and kind of ask, from a clergy perspective, a lot of times I know you counsel, you see, see mental illness and mental health within the congregation and abroad. What are some signs that you encounter, some behaviors you encounter through counseling with mental health?
Well, it's across the board. I mean, pastoring is very much like being in practice. And I worked at Park Center. People come with various issues, whether it's depression or what's situational depression or clinical depression, family issues that have led to there. I've dealt with people that have been on the edge or verge of suicide or suicidal thoughts. So you see it all, and I actually am thankful to God that I had the time that I did have at Park Center before becoming a pastor, because it made me more aware of what I refer to as people's chariot ride, how they arrive to the situation, circumstances in their life, and not just, for lack of a better term, just, put a verse on it. People deal with real life issues, and while, the Bible is vital and important, I definitely believe in it. There are practical and professional help that is needed for many situations that we now find ourselves encountering within the church, within the context of mental health.
Wow, that's a hashtag, everybody, the chariot ride. Tell us that one more time, Pastor Peyton, the meaning of that between the chariot ride and put a verse on it. I love that. What is that again?
Well, there's a passage of scripture in Acts where God tells Peter after a successful campaign to go and join himself to the Ethiopian's chariot. The Greek word there actually means to glue. And I think in many instances that there's a failure to glue ourselves to the reality of people's chariot, how they arrived at that particular place in their life. And so Park Center helped me to be cognitive and sensitive to those chariots that people arrive at.
It's so funny that you would say that, Pastor Peyton, because Don Smith, one of the ladies that I had on the panel for Makeover Conference, talked about how at church, that was one of her biggest struggles growing up with depression, is that everybody just told her, you need to pray more, you need to fast. And she said it was so offensive, and it actually made her feel worse than feel better. And that's why I think she went so long into her adulthood with depression, because it was almost a shamed feeling when she went to church. So how do we educate clergy and congregation members on the seriousness of mental health?
Well, I'm a firm believer that the clergy has to network with the other professional people within the community and be educated themselves on the psychological, emotional, as well as the spiritual, what I call the psychosocial spiritual condition of people in general. Unfortunately, I say this with great love for the clergy, because I am one. We don't get that education. We don't educate ourselves, or we don't attend workshops or clinics and to understand, as Dixie has said, the implications of depression, etc. Rick Warren's son a few years ago committed suicide, and former president of Southern Baptist Convention, Dr. Page, lost a daughter to suicide. The two of them came together and began to go around and basically bring awareness to the mental health issues within the church, and subsequently SBC, and Southern Baptist Convention in 2013, did a resolution on mental health as they would address it as a denomination. You know, it wasn't until these tragedies occurred within the life of these two prominent Southern Baptist pastors and their openness and willingness to be exposed and put their family business, if you would, on Front Street, that the denomination, the largest Protestant denomination in the country, decided to take it on. You know, in the past, you know, depending on particularly some denominations, all you do is want to lay hand and bring out the oil, you know, and you pour oil on people's head, and they're still left with the same situation. It hasn't been addressed. Now, I believe in healing. I'm a pastor, but I also believe in the healing that comes with those who have labored over the symptoms and studied and understand the psychological and emotional conditions in people.
That's good, Pastor Peyton. I have a question for both of you, actually. Suicide is showing up at a very rapid rate in young people, and you know my passion and my heartbeat. But what are your thoughts about young people now and really making that choice to end their life?
Go ahead, Shanice.
Well, I think what we have seen over the years, primarily in our community, I mean the Black community, is, you know, you have lack of connections with one another. We have all this technology, and parents are not available, even for those who are in the home, aren't connecting with their children. And so I think it removes the opportunity to have eyes, as you would say, on our young people. Back in the day, you know, it wasn't anything out of the ordinary to have, you know, everybody in the church looking at you if you were a child. You couldn't get away with much. And it seemed like it was just an overall concern about everyone's well-being in those days. And I think some of that is missing. And I think that can be attributed in part to why we've seen this rise, not to mention which, along with social media and technology, is an opportunity for people to remain hidden while they do some of the things like bullying that can be very detrimental to young people who haven't quite developed the skills to negate or to address those issues.
Yeah, and I agree with everything that she said. You know, young people have been detached from the bigger part of the community. They are a segment of our community rather than the part of the whole of the community, and they don't get the attention. There's an interesting study done recently. The Southern Baptist Lifeway Research did a study after Rick Warren's situation and et cetera, and they asked a question concerning mental health in the church. And the question was simple. They said, you know, with just the Bible and prayer alone, can mental illness and depression, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia be addressed? Now, this is the interesting part for me. 50% of those 18 to 29 years old said yes. 50%. 50%. 18 to 29-year-olds said yes. Now, I live and breathe the African American community, and all of the years I was at Park Center, I had a caseload that the majority of that caseload was white. Black folks traditionally do not go get counseling. They do not talk about those things that burden them. They do not have a confidant, or even or go to the pastor, or if they go to the pastor may not be equipped to deal with the depths of those mental illness situations. So you have a group of people that traditionally don't go to counseling. You have the most important person within that community, as seen by them, the pastor, that may not be apt to deal with it professionally. And then you have a group that believe that, hey, I'm just going to pray about it. So with that triad, that deadly triad, I would say, it leads to young people making the decision in our community, or it helps lead to them to making the decision to choose suicide rather than life.
I agree with you, Pastor, full-heartedly. I also want to add that, in our terms of our African-American community, historically, with the stigma that we attach to mental illness, and we did the best we could, I think, with what we had, the tools that we had back then. And I remember, people wanting to beat you, give you whippings if you wet in the bed and those kinds of things versus exploring why is the child wet in the bed at 8 years old. And so I think we need to reframe our conversation with African Americans in particular and help them to understand that mental illness is an illness as we would look at heart disease or diabetes, and that, there is something going on psychologically, chemically, that oftentimes causes this, sometimes events, but oftentimes it's chemical, and that family history of mental illness is also important for us to know. I never thought I'd be quoting Empire or talking about Empire publicly, but I must say I do agree with the job they're doing in presenting mental illness in our community.
Yeah, I would agree. I never thought I was just saying. The only episode I did watch was the episode that referred to that. So I agree with you. We have attached in our community. We have attached such a stigma, and to mental health and not wanting to talk about it. And I come back to that idea of not understanding a person's chariot ride. I remember I did a series of sermons, and I addressed sexual abuse. And I would be not over exaggerating if I said that 75, maybe 80% of the people in the house, men and women, majority women, acknowledged during that series that they had been sexually abused. That carries with it its own symptoms and adulthood for women. And not understanding that, no matter how much you pray, and I'm all for that, I don't minimize that, but you've got to understand what comes along with being violated and that trust being raped from your innocence. And what it leads to in adulthood, and particularly in women and also in men.
Well, and that was one of the things, Pastor Peyton, when I hear the conversation that's going on, which I am loving right now, we still need the village. And, taken away. But also, I need to understand, why do we see it as a weakness? Like, why do we see in the Black community mental health as such a weakness to a point that we're willing to silently suffer and die rather than press forward and seek help? Because now the media and everybody else is very open about getting mental health. There's commercials now. There's all kinds of ways to reach help to get help on a broader scale. But still, in our community, it's still kind of a stronghold. So why do we still deem it as a weakness?
Well, you're going to always curse the dark until you are exposed to some light. And I think, what you're doing here this morning brings light into the picture. For people who are, quote unquote, on a professional level, to be open and honest about their own journey, the things that they've had to deal with, whether it's been situational depression or clinical depression, and those who have also been willing to share, suicide ideation and all those things that go along with that. By sharing that, you empower people who look to us and say, okay, if that was their reality, why am I not willing to get the help necessary for me? And I think that's where our freedom comes in. More people who have wrestled with these practical dilemmas and mental dilemmas have to be open and honest about, their wrestling. They have to be open and honest about dealing with that strong man in their life. And with that comes freedom for the entire community, in my opinion.
I love that, because I think so many times, it can't be seen as a heart disease, because there's a stigma that comes with a lot of times mental illness, and even with young people in the classrooms, when we know that somebody has, autism or, just different things that are now surfacing among young people, it's a teachable moment that has to happen in order for people to be more accepting. And so I looked at what we did at the Makeover Conference with Mary Bird and the fashion show. People thought that the fashion show initially, Pastor Peyton and Sharice, was about the clothing. But what we did was we unmasked people's history and some of their mental health issues and why and how it made them who they are today. And it was a powerful, powerful moment. So one of the things that I'm learning is that I do think the conversations have to be had, but if someone is experiencing symptoms, what do we do and where do we go for help?
Can I say something real quick before we move on to that? And one thing, if we're going to look at having these conversations, which are so important, and I agree with Pastor Peyton wholeheartedly, and to add to that, we need to also remember, in order for people to do that, we have to keep people safe. And whenever you have a forum or any kind of conversation where we are either asking someone to share their experiences or you realize that someone is now getting up and starting to share their experience, to remind the people who are there to please keep this person safe. And you do that by not going around putting your spin on what this person is saying, but being supportive. And sometimes you don't have to say anything to be supportive. And I think, well-intended people oftentimes, can do more harm than good by trying to find something so profound to say that winds up hurting people. And so we have to create these safe spaces in order for people to share their experiences with mental illness.
I'm glad you brought that up. I am glad that you brought that up because confidentiality is so crucial in general, and especially within the African American community, and especially within the context of church. People have shared. I've heard of people who've shared their pain, only to hear it preached on the following Sunday, or shared it with someone within a group or a small group, and only to hear it communicated to others as outside the group. Confidentiality is so important because that's one of the reasons why we do not, African American and people in general, but particularly African Americans, do not open up, is because of that whole idea of I don't want everybody to know my business. I would rather suffer than to take a chance of somebody talking about me.
So where is it that people can go to get help? And one of the things I do want to stress is that even at the Makeover Conference, that was one of the things that we really wanted to pray about, Sharice, is that people leave this room and that the people who did share their experiences would be able to be safe. And, Yolanda, Mary, Melvina, a lot of the ladies have inboxed and called and we've talked and debriefed. And they said at the support that they have received, even that day, Yolanda Walker, 3 or 4 women came up to her that day and just kind of shared love and embraced her. And Amy Trosper, who was on your panel, really expressed how people came up afterwards, even some point to where it was overwhelming for Amy. But, she got through it. So thank you for pushing that point home. That piece of safetyness when we share. So y'all love the hashtag Momentum Monday. To hashtag to keep it safe, keep it confidential. If you're going to attempt to be a part of this village that is going to love people to another level and meet them where they are, that we have to keep things confidential and safe. So we have had so much on this call. We are going to do a part 2. But before we go and wrap up and maybe go into our after call, I would like for Sharice to kind of give us information on, because we have talked, but then we don't really give solutions. So I really want to make sure that on this call we give someone who's on the call today information on where they can go and get help from national level. So, Sharice, do you have information where they can go and get help?
Sure. Before I give the national information, however, I do want to say this real quickly, and that is for those of you or us who feel sad or low sometimes where you're depressed, but you may not be clinically depressed, there are some things you can do without going to a formal type of situation, and that would be exercise, get moving around, get outside, watch what you're eating, stay away from the alcohol, those kinds of things. Make sure you're getting plenty of rest and surround yourself with positive people. You'd be surprised about people who take from you emotionally versus pouring into you and how that can affect your psyche. And, of course, check with your family physician. There are good resources to make referrals for you and to determine whether or not what type of help you may need. And, of course, there's psychotherapy and counseling. And, of course, don't stop going to your pastor, and with Pastor Peyton's help and others, hopefully they will become more educated in terms of at least realizing when something may be out of their lane or they should pass off to a different discipline. So by all means do that. But there are some national numbers that one can call, and one of them is the Suicide Prevention Lifeline, and that number is 1-800-273-TALK, and that number is 8255. So it's 1-800-273-8255. And then nationally, there is NAMI, and they are well known throughout the nation. Their number is 1-800-950-6264. That's 1-800-950-6264, and that's I believe it's a National Alliance on Mental Illness, and they are a great resource as well.
Awesome information. Thank you both. I'm going to bring Jill Jordan Green back in so she can kind of give us some points and move us into our after call. Jill, are you with us?
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Absolutely. Oh, my goodness. What an amazing discussion. Pastor Peyton and Sharice, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Folks, if you're still on the line with us, you are here on Momentum Mondays, and today we're tackling the tough conversation around mental health. It should be a conversation. For too long, there's been a stigma, and today we've learned some very, very powerful things. I want to thank you guys for the conversation. Thank you for the symptoms and the triggers, and thank you for the what to do. Folks, look forward to part 2 next week. We're going to come back with some more amazing information and stay on for a couple minutes. We will have an after call, and that's where you get a chance to ask questions or make comments, or you get to hear our co-host extend the conversation. But before we do that, I just want to share, we had a special guest on a couple weeks ago. Her name was Charity Jordan, and she shared with us, co-host, that for Mother's Day, that she and my brother, Justin Jordan, are piloting their very brand new web series called Mommy Uncensored. It is going to be highlighted on the Magic Johnson Aspire TV network, and I just wanted to give her a chance to say good morning. Charity, are you out there?
Good morning, everybody. It's almost Mother's Day. We're so excited. I can't wait for Mother's Day to happen. Our brand new television show, Mommy Uncensored, that's Mommy Uncensored, is going to be on Aspire Network. And I'm glad that Jill Green is giving me the opportunity, again, to let you guys know about it. Please check it out. Set your DVRs. It's going to be 8 p.m. on Aspire TV. It's on all the major cable networks. So if you have AT&T or Comcast or whatever it is in your area, just check out and see what channel Aspire is. And please set your DVR to watch. To follow us on Instagram and Facebook on Mommy Uncensored.
Absolutely. And we talked, talking about solutions and things that can help you. If you're feeling blue, tune in. It's a comedy that'll make you feel really great. So, Charity, thank you so much for stopping by and reminding us about that for Mother's Day. It should be a very special Sunday. This Sunday. Absolutely. Pastor Peyton, are you still there?
Still here.
Awesome. I just wanted to thank you again. And, Lynette, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and open up the line, and we're going to go ahead and transition into our app. And what that means is if you would like to ask a question or make a statement, you can hit *6. That will unmute your individual line. We'll see that you're muted, and you'll get a chance to dialogue with us. And so I'd like to kind of jump back in the conversation for just a few minutes. Pastor Peyton, you talked a little bit about the stigma of mental health. in the African American community specifically. And I just want to dig there a little bit and just find out, where did that come from? Because you mentioned a few people in the clergy who had, young people that committed suicide. But we have, hundreds of examples now, unfortunately, where young people, not just young adults, but we now have middle schoolers and high schoolers making the choice to choose a permanent solution to a temporary situation. But, Pastor, where does that stigma come from for us?
Well, I think it's a part of our culture. I mean, it's unfortunately is ingrained in the culture of our community, where we were basically forced, our ancestors were basically forced not to trust anyone. And so it has made its way to the popular culture today. And we still don't trust. I mean, we still, and there are reasons. I mean, in everyone's experience, they've had someone that, once they opened up, that has violated their trust, and they've decided not to open up anymore. But it's historically, the historicity of our journey has forced us not to trust and to keep everything. I remember growing up, and my grandmother said, you don't talk about family business. You keep it right here. Don't be talking. In many ways, you didn't even talk about it within the family, because you
That's right.
not ask the question about it. I said it. That's it. It's gone, boy. They're going on. And so people were left with the stigma of whatever they were suffering. And so it's the same now. You're forced to project an image, and that image is you got everything under control while you're dying. You're going to church, raising your hand, praising the Lord, but you are dying inside.
Hey, Jill.
Jill, yes.
This is
Dawn.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Dawn. Just real quickly, I just wanted to touch on the comment about choosing a permanent ending, so to speak, to a temporary situation. And although you're right, but the people who are there in that moment, they don't see it as a temporary situation, whatever their situation may be. And they feel hopeless. They have really, they have left no stone unturned, so to speak, from their perspective. And so they really believe that there is no other alternative but to end their life. And so while those of us on the outside, can see, well, you could do this and perhaps that and try that, they really don't see it that way.
Wow.
Yeah, they're hopeless. They are hopeless. They've lost any sense of hope. Their backs have been permanently pressed against the proverbial wall, and they see no hope. And so they choose that. That is their reality, even though we may be able to stand on the outside and look in and give them a myriad of options. For them, at that moment, there are none.
Wow.
Hey, Jill, John, go ahead.
Because just what you're talking about is just because I have, this is very close to me. What do you do when you see it, right? So you see it. You see those symptoms. You can check off a ton of them. Sharice, in terms of the ones you checked, you said, hey, these are some signs. And Pastor Payton, that maybe that's the origin of it, that they're not used to sharing or don't think that's what you do. The generationally speaking, that sort of thing. What do you do when you see it? And how do you get them to get help or to be open to it? I'm just really, what do you do in that instance?
Well, the one thing that
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Pastor.
No, go ahead.
The one thing I always encourage people to do is to continue to talk with them, have the conversation. And one thing our society has taught us is to not ask questions, right? Quit being nosy, get out of their business. But this is a time where you need to be a little nosy. You need to be real direct and ask specific questions. What do you have a plan? What are you doing? What did you mean by that? Well, yesterday you said you weren't going to be here anymore. What do you mean? What does that mean? Okay? And then once you have that conversation, try to find out what is the locus of their pain. What is causing this pain? You see, and I'm not saying that perhaps as a layperson you can get to it, but the fact that you're having the conversation with them will alert them that someone else is watching me, someone else may care enough or be concerned, and you just keep on. Let them know what help is available. And on the other end of the spectrum, Dawn, sometimes we have things in place like a 72-hour hold in which we have to just go get somebody to come get them the help that they need.
Okay.
You know,
Thank you.
I would add to that because you know, there's an old adage that goes like this: 10% of people change when they hear the truth. 10% people don't change. 80% of people change within the context of a relationship. And I think that to add to what Sis has just said, you know, the relationship piece is so vital. You know, if we connect with one another and we see someone, you know, with those symptoms that's not themselves, and we enter into that relationship to dig deeper, to get nosy. I'm not just going to let you fade away into the background. I'm concerned about you. The chances of that person turning around, statistically, 80%, rather than just throwing a verse at it and leaving them on their own and say you got to pray more, et cetera. We have to get back to a relationship. That's where the rubber meets the road, and that's where the paradigm shift changes, both psychologically and emotionally and spiritually.
That's good. Thank you.
Excellent. That is awesome. What do you guys think about this? And then we'll go ahead and begin the transition. Again, you're on Momentum Monday After Call. If you have any thoughts or questions you'd like to share, please feel free to unmute your line. We will see you and call on you. Or you can just say, excuse me, my name is, and I'd like to share. But what do you think about access? Sharice, you made a very powerful statement that parents are not as available, or authority figures are not as available anymore for kids, even when they're in the home. But kids almost have more access. When I think about how the way that a lot of, like, for example, I personally know a young man, 17 years old, in Louisville, who recently took his life. This kid had been accepted into 17 colleges, 6 of them were Ivy League. He was all everything, and took his life with a gun. And we're hearing more and more stories like that, and it seems like kids have more access to guns and things of that nature. Sharice, what are your thoughts about that?
Well, I mean, you make a very good point, and males in particular are going to use more lethal means to attempt to end their lives, firearms, hangings, etc. And so parents need to be mindful of whatever weapons they have in their homes to keep those things locked up and make it as difficult as possible for accidents to happen and or intentional harm. Along with that, parents and others oftentimes don't realize that children get depressed as well. And so we tend to want our kids to walk the straight and narrow and to behave a certain manner. And so we can gloss over or ignore or even mistake the children's behaviors for something other than depression. So acting out, being angry in class, picking at a sibling constantly. The same thing, though, minimal sleep, too much sleep, weight gain, bedwetting. All these things are signals that young people are depressed. And as Pastor Peyton mentioned earlier, the key to that, as with adults, is to have conversations. Got to have conversations, and it may not be a parent. It may be somebody in church who recognizes a young person, and I would encourage you to connect with them. My mother is very, very good at this, and every young person she meets pretty much, she makes sure she finds something positive to say about them or to ask about them, to appear interested in their lives, and you'd be surprised of how impactful that can be.
And I would add to that, it's not just the child that's obvious acting out, et cetera, but it's that lost child, the one that, as this young man that you described, the one that outwardly seems to have everything going on. He or she is excelling in school and all that. And so we don't really pay any attention to him or her,
right,
because they got everything going on.
Right.
But inside, they are lost. They are hopeless.
Right.
And so we don't pick up the signs for them, because that's just one child that I don't have to worry about. But,
that's
you know,
right,
like it is in a classic alcoholic family, that's the lost child. That's the one that is about to check out and you don't know it.
That's good,
Yeah.
Pastor.
You know what, Jill and Pastor and Cerise, is what you just said is what I was going to chime in and say, because I could actually pinpoint 2 women that no one would think is going through to this degree, and we miss it. And that's why I think sometimes we get surprised when we see on the television who are the people that are committing suicide, because we think, why them? They had the money, they had the looks. But what was happening with those 2 particular women, sometimes I feel obligated to just be there and without taking on their stuff. But how do a person set the boundaries where you don't feel like you got to take on their stuff or be there all the time, or how do you deal with it, how you talk to them? Because at some point, just with these 2 particular women I'm thinking of, sometimes it's almost like in the midst of the conversation, certain words are being sent to me as if I'm responsible for certain behaviors, or I need to be responsible for some of their behaviors and what they're talking about.
Well, I think with any relationship that you have, whether it's someone who has suicidal ideation or otherwise, it's good to remind people that you are responsible for you ultimately. I'm here as a support, and I'd love to support you in any way that I can. However, ultimately, we make our own choices. And some people, maybe not in the instance that you're describing, but there are some people who've learned how to manipulate and to allow you to feel a certain way, when in fact that's something that you can't take on. But I would encourage you to continue to engage, continue to ask the questions, what do you mean by that? Or to flat out say, well, how do you see this ending? What outcome are you seeking? You know, what could make this better for you? And to start from there and see if they have any insight as to what it is that they need.
I agree with that 100%. You know, there's nothing to be added to that. You know, because people. Only thing I would say was, you know, situations are different. You know, and some people. I hate giving global statements because the individual and the situations are different, but there are some common denominators, and I think that in your gut there's always that gut check where okay, you're making this about me, you're making this my issue. This is really your issue. Let's keep it off of me and put it on you. And I think that you have those strategic moments where you have to say that and subsequently set those boundaries to help that person into abundant living rather than staying where he or she may be at that moment.
Very
Amen.
good.
Amen. This has been extremely powerful and informative this morning. Thank you so much again, Pastor Peyton, and thank you, Sharice. And thank you, Danita. This is a passion point for Danita, and she was very excited about hosting this part of Momentum Monday, so we look forward to part 2. I'd like to say that we're always offering resources, and you know that the co-hosts are always very, very busy. And tomorrow, Pastor Anthony Peyton will be speaking at Indiana Tech doing a Father Talk. And it's about daddies and daughters, it sounds like, and it's hosted by Girls Rock. And I'm super excited. I wish I could be there, Pastor Peyton. What time is that event tomorrow evening?
It's at 6 o'clock, and it's going to be in the Multiplex Theater, and it's totally free. So there's no fee to come. Andre will also be a part of a panel talk that we'll lead, and I'm excited. But I also wanted to share, Jill, that this month, this is how God is. It's on purpose. I had no idea that this month was mental illness month. And, you know, I'm telling you, I love when the Holy Spirit works because Keon Henderson, you all know, is from Fort Wayne, Indiana, but he is now out in Texas, and he is doing a big series. And I tell people, I lean on my people. And so one of the things he wrote this morning, I wanted to read this. He said, this morning I pray for generational sickness and disease that has been traveling through your bloodlines, tainting your legacy and bullying your offspring. He said, I don't have to be convinced that mental illness is real because I know that the devil is real. And his assignment is to steal, kill, and destroy the body of Christ. And he starts messing with you first in your mind. I said, okay, come on, God. Really?
Woo!
Seriously. Yeah.
That's
and
awesome.
so I just want to say thank you. Thank you to our guest today, Pastor Peyton. I'm hoping that on next week we're going to talk, but Alice Jordan Miles has confirmed that she will be our guest for next week as well. So we're going to add another piece to our panel. But God is faithful. And the one thing that I want to say is that we all have a role in this village to play. We just need to make sure that we step into the appropriate role and play that role well. And so I'm hoping that I'm doing my part and others on the call. Find your role so that people, and just lead with love so that people can be healed from the hurts and some of the bad habits that we picked up.
Well, let me be the first to say that all of you are doing your part. This has been powerful, and I thank you for the invitation. I mean, this is probably one of the best kept secrets that's going on, and we got to uncover the secret. We got to make sure that more people know in general what's going on Monday for this hour, because this is powerful. This is absolutely powerful.
Awesome.
Wow.
Awesome.
Pastor, thank
you. Hey, you should post that, Danita, what you read in the group. That was awesome.
Yeah, I'm finna inbox Keon because I'm telling him I'm stealing that from him or borrowing it.
Yeah,
borrowing.
just do hashtag repost.
It's all right.
Yeah, just do hashtag repost, and it'll just show that you reposted, because that's powerful. That was amazing.
Yeah, because Yolanda teaches me there's rules to Facebook, and I want to make sure I follow them.
Yeah, just do hashtag repost or tag him in it. Folks, thank you so much. We are out of time. Again, we want to thank you to our very special guests, Pastor Anthony Payton and Sharice Dixie out of Fort Wayne, Indiana. Fort Wayne, Indiana, my hometown, represented this morning. We're out of time. Again, you're here on Momentum Mondays, where your Mondays will never be the same. We're back here next Monday at 7:25 a.m. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.